Honestly, Yo-kai Watch Blasters is a very easy game. The combat is incredibly easy to learn, and as long as you're at the recommended level, you can probably just button spam to beat every single main story level. But what if you're not at the recommended level? Well then, I present to you the Level 1 Challenge. There are quite a few rules for this challenge, with the main one obviously being that none of the yokai on my team can under any circumstances be above level 1 in a mission. However, I'm limiting myself a bit further than that. I'm banning the Crank-a-kai as well as KJ songs, passwords, QR codes, trading, and also forcing myself to use the default team to be truly bottom of the barrel blasters. The Crank-a-kai gives some of the best yokai, and they start at level 1, meaning the challenge would become way too easy. KJ songs provide free buffs that feel scummy to use, and the other 3 bans are self-explanatory, because they just provide free stuff to make the challenge easier, and being forced to use the default team isn't as bad as you would think, since the other 3 bans make it basically impossible to get any other level 1 yokai anyways. Quick note before we start, I did this challenge 2 years ago, and didn't upload it due to demotivation, but I never deleted the footage, so I decided to make it now. Enjoy. Anyway, now we begin the challenge. Chapter 1 is going to be incredibly easy due to the fact that you aren't expected to level up very much at all. Right? I speedran the first mission only to immediately be met with a huge problem that I didn't account for. For those who don't know, you level up in this game not with EXP, but with a currency called Oni Orbs. You can go to Naked Speed on the 2nd floor to use them to level up. However, when we unlock Naked Speed, there's an issue. I'll let the footage speak for itself, as it would just be a waste to explain it. So, does this mean the run is dead? Well, it's complicated. Maybe we could just not use No Way for the remainder of the run. Unfortunately, the game doesn't like it if I try to move out with less than 4 yokai on my team, and I would be doomed anyway. Maybe if I somehow got into the befriending mission and befriended a yokai to use instead of No Way? That's a good idea, but all the yokai in that mission are level 2. So what can we do? The only solution I had to continue the run was to do something I'm not proud of. By editing my save file, I lowered No Way back to level 1 after having spent the Oni Orbs to level him up. This was probably incredibly stupid, and I bet that as soon as I upload this, someone's gonna comment a really simple workaround that doesn't involve reverse cheating. But for now, it was all I could do. If that happens, the comment will be pinned. Just remember that from here on out, everything I do is purely theoretical, and the challenge is technically failed before it truly begins. That aside, Chapter 1 poses absolutely no threats, and I go straight through every mission with no problems whatsoever. In fact, Yo-kai Watch Blasters is such an unfathomably easy game that I had no issues all the way through Chapter 2 either, dealing with Sproink trivially, though it did take a while. Eventually, an issue finally arose in Chapter 3, Mission 2, where you finally start to get a feel for the fact you're underleveled. The first half of the mission takes a long time because of how little strength you have. You're also always at risk of dying, and you have to go to a safe area for around 2 entire minutes, just sitting there using Sandmet to heal. I was able to get through this though. However, at the Colosseum, I finally had my first death. And then I died a second time. Luckily, this wasn't a recurring thing, and I randomly beat it the 3rd time somehow. Yeah, so still no huge problems. The Gutsy Bones battle at the end of Chapter 3 cut it real close, but it still wasn't too bad, and I got through it. In Chapter 4, I opted to train with Faux Kappa, but I doubt it really matters that much. I unfortunately died once due to being supremely stupid, but after completely obliterating Mermaiden's team with a Force Blaster, it was time for SV Snaggerjag, the first relevant roadblock in my run. This boss takes so long. Not only does it take an absurd amount of time, but the fight itself is incredibly difficult. You can just breeze through the first phase with no issues, but the second phase is brutal. You can barely do any damage to the boss first of all. Then there's the fish. The stupid fish. I had never had an issue with these fish ever in my lifetime until I did this challenge. If I make a yokai tier list, these guys are going at the very bottom, mark my words. All 3 fish need to be dealt with, or else there'll be more and more of them until they'll just wipe out your team completely. It takes a terrible amount of time to even kill one of them. If you leave a Grumpus alone, it's just going to be really annoying, and you'll randomly get hit by it multiple times. If you leave a Shooter alone, you'll get caught in one of its attacks at some random point and probably die. If you leave a meditatum, yeah, that. If you leave a meditatum alone, then all your hard work will be wasted as the boss is gonna get healed. However, that's not actually that bad, because unlike some other healers, it heals in a range, whether it be boss, enemy, or the player's team. If we're ever in a desperate situation, we can just troll a meditatum into healing our entire team. However, that won't be enough. This boss is simply too strong for us. So how do we fix that without leveling up? Well, I haven't really been trying in terms of giving my allies good equipment, like, at all. So to overcome the boss, we just need good oh my god, that's gonna take a while to get. I have all the Oni orbs I need for anything and more, since I don't need to spend any on leveling, but materials are a lot more annoying to get, and the grinding would take so long that this video would probably be released multiple months later. But what if we didn't have to get the required materials? What if we could just, I don't know, break the menu to allow us to buy the equipment that we can't afford for the price of one that we can? Think of it as scamming Signaton, if you will. Wait a second. Yeah, so thanks to the Yo-kai Watch speedrunning community, I was informed of this glitch, which would go on to absolutely, completely, and utterly carry me in this challenge. Now, I could get much better equipment. I opted to prioritize strength over everything else for Jibanyan, because I'm incredibly impatient and not willing to fight SV for 15 minutes straight, because 14 is much better. For the rest of the team, I just got them defensive equipment to make sure that if I died, they could revive me. Fighting this boss was really boring and painful, since every attempt was so long. I started a stream at one point, did 1 or 2 attempts, and then I just stopped the stream out of boredom when it had only been half an hour. My attempts were starting to get far enough for the big fish to come out, which I died to more than once because I just was not ready for it. If you even come close to the beam, you're already dead. But eventually, I would finally beat SV after around 2 hours of just fighting this one guy over and over again. And with that, we can safely move on to chapter 5. I was really worried about this chapter for some reason. I don't know why, but my brain kept on telling me that Slimermander was going to pose a threat and that I should be scared. Luckily, I am stupid, and the whole chapter was flawless. I forgot that this battle happens in a small confined area, and since Jibanyan can dodge, there was basically no chance of death as long as I stayed focused. At this point, I thought I was unstoppable. Most missions were no longer a struggle with the equipment I was able to get. It wasn't easy, but it wasn't difficult either. This was becoming a really fun challenge, and I was getting really far too. Which is why it pains me to talk about Chapter 6 Mission 1. Chapter 6 Mission 1 is a very simple mission. Harry Barry is being bullied, and you need to talk to him, so you follow him and kill all the enemies bullying him across the map before the enemies kill him first. Luckily, he dies really slowly, giving you lots of time to fight the enemies and basically ignore his health bar. The mission is in 3 waves, where first you kill all the enemies near the spawn area, then at the temple, and then at the graveyard. Incredibly simple, completely normal Blasters mission. Everything I described is how the mission is when not doing a Blasters challenge. In this challenge, almost none of those things apply. The first wave is dead simple, but then the torture begins. Wave 2 at the temple consists of a variety of enemies. Most of these can be dealt with without issues, but there's a few enemies that can and will end your attempts at this mission consistently. If you ignore the Sweltons, they will likely kill your entire team alongside all the other easy enemies. And while they don't seem like they should be a threat, they're one of the worst enemies in this level. The other issue is the sheer amount of Tantronis. They can randomly surround you or your teammates and also end your attempt, usually alongside a Swelton. Then, there's Cut and Cheese. That's right, this idiot. This is the main enemy you need to kill, as it has the most health by far. This wave is possible, and after a few attempts you can get through it somewhat consistently, but nothing will prepare you for wave 3. The enemies are absurdly strong in this wave, so strong that you may just randomly die without warning. Forget about your teammates, it's too late for them. Just hope and pray that Persevere comes and revives one so that one revives the rest. But make sure you live until then. If you go to revive them yourself, well... My original strategy for this was to try to obliterate them with items, but they weren't enough. Force Blasters are impossible to get a perfect shot with, and won't completely kill them anyway. Robo-Fists do good damage, but only targets one, so it barely helps. And you'll probably be dead by the time you can activate a Blaze Bomb. Even with the items that are at the battle area, meaning 4 attack items in total, it just wasn't enough. I kept on trying with this strategy, however. I got decently close to finishing it off a few times, but would always die just a bit too early. I eventually gave up that strategy and decided that maybe it would be better if I brought 2 plum rice balls into the mission instead. I would use them to make sure I didn't die, then pick up the wave 3 battle items. And on my very first attempt with my new strategy, this happened. Harry Barry. I do such little damage that the stupid bear actually dies before me. So what does this mean? Well, if someone theoretically wanted to complete this mission, they would need not only perfect RNG, but also be under a time limit for each wave. If you don't kill all the enemies in the time frame, let alone survive it all, then say goodbye to that attempt. This chapter is supposed to be about me proving myself by beating Gargaros, not a scared defenseless Harrisville mascot. I had been going at this stupid mission for months. This mission is so terrible that I was genuinely gonna end the video here. That was, until I remembered. Equipment. Currently, Jabanion has the cat bell. It's good, but clearly it's not good enough. Remember the glitch, scamming Signaton? It only works if the items are actually available to select in the menu. If I haven't met the requirements for it to appear, I can't do the glitch. And by the time it shows up, you probably have all the needed items for it anyways, so scamming Signaton just isn't going to cut it anymore. So now, the plan is to somehow get an equipment upgrade. I barely know about any of the available equipment in Blasters since I barely play this game, and so I asked a generic user, a Blasters enthusiast. We found out that by doing patrol missions in Breezy Hills and Blossom Heights to get 2 Mysterious Crystals, a Brave Crystal, and 3 Brave Essence, I would be able to craft a Raven's Blade. There is also a chance of an orb dropping instead of a crystal, which isn't actually a bad thing, because then, theoretically, I can upgrade the blade to a peacock, which would be way overkill, but maybe come in clutch later. Anyway, it's grinding time. I headed into Breezy Hills Patrol looking for Casanono and Markle, as according to the wiki, they can spawn there and are the only 2 that spawn there who can drop what I need. However, after the entire patrol, I found neither and also forgot to go to the door and failed, adding a really stupid death to the counter. Then, I headed to Blossom Heights looking for Lion Hearts, then realized about halfway through that if I couldn't find 2 A ranks, I'm not finding an S rank. So with the few yokai I befriended, I headed through the door. I decided to at least upgrade my teammates' equipment, giving Sandmare the round buckle belt and No Way the spiteful sash to hopefully keep them alive a bit longer. And that was when it hit me. Don't you unlock sorcery in this game by befriending enough yokai? With that, I rushed to the LV gym, and there it was. I had unlocked it by doing that patrol mission. I talked to this NPC so many times and had him tell me to befriend more yokai, just for me to only realize now. Anyway, I gave Jabanion this soul, and it was time. Forget the Raven's Blade. I hopped into the mission and No Way immediately died on the first wave, making me realize that maybe the spiteful sash was a mistake. I decided to keep going with the mindset that I would give him a round buckle belt after the attempt, thinking it was only an attempt. The second wave was rough. I completely forgot I had battle items and just didn't use them, almost dying multiple times but just barely pulling through. I ditched my Force Blaster and picked up this Getaway Plush just in case too. Now it was on to wave 3. After sitting there and healing for a solid 5 minutes, it was time. Would this be it? I headed straight into it, and it was going really well, but then my teammates started dying. I was trying to both revive them and fight at the same time. I managed to take out Bruff with his ultimate, and then killed the last Tantroni too, meaning the only one left was Eyesore. All of my allies were on low health, most of them dying and being revived in a never-ending cycle. I was chipping away at Eyesore's health, but I myself kept dying over and over too. Then, Persevere came and revived someone twice, which was very lucky. Eyesore had almost no health left. I was so nervous and just stopped moving and began spamming A and X regardless of the cooldown, hoping to land a hit. And then... I didn't even use the items. Oh my god. I had finally done it. This mission was so demotivating and so difficult, but I did it. All I needed was Saltery and to actually realize how bad my original equipment was. And with that, we can finally move on to mission 2. Oh, mission 2. This mission is also supposed to be simple. Get 5 pieces of marbled beef. To get the beef, you need to kill the yokai with this marker on the map. They're incredibly strong for a level 1 team, but killable. Then, they should drop 1 marbled beef. Right, guys? Right? Surely they're gonna drop 1 marbled beef, right? For some reason, and I don't even know if this is intentional or not, they'll just decide to straight up not drop the item. Why, you may ask? I don't know. Ask level 5. I did attempt after attempt after attempt on this mission too, but it just didn't work out. After the last one, I was already so tired of this challenge, even though we've only run into a few roadblocks. If I did beat this mission, what would come next? Even if I theoretically managed to beat Gargaros, there's just no way Chapter 7 will be any easier. And so, I stopped playing, thinking maybe I would come back to it later. But almost 2 years later, I'm finally declaring the challenge failed. This challenge was really fun up until the end. If you have any more challenge ideas for me on a 3DS Yo-kai Watch game, feel free to suggest them. As long as it's not for Busters 2, because I haven't played it yet, and I never will. Anyway, that's all for this video that released 2 years late. Bye!